The merchant sold the obese girl as infertile, but the mountain man didn't care. He only wanted her. The early spring wind swept down from the high plains of Montana Territory in 1886, rattling the wooden shutters of Silverton's trading house. The smell of tobacco, sweat, and horse dung mingled in the air, but the people gathered inside carried something fouler than odors, greed and cruelty. At the center of the room stood a young woman, her head bowed so low her forehead nearly touched her chest. Clara Reed, 22 years old, with a thick waist, soft, round face, and trembling hands gripping the folds of her worn dress. Her shoes were covered in mud. Her scarf was too thin for the cold day. Her eyes were red from crying. But Clara's suffering hadn't begun today. It had roots that stretched back through years of relentless torment. Clara had been a chubby child. Even at 7, she was rounder than other girls her age, and that difference became the weapon her classmates used against her. Pig girl, eats like a hog, looks like a sow. The chant had followed her through every year of schooling. Children threw rocks at her on the way home. They stole her lunch, claiming she didn't need it anyway. Teachers did nothing, and some even participated. Perhaps if Clara spent less time thinking about food and more time on her studies, Mrs. Hartwell had said in front of the entire classroom when Clara was 9, she might amount to something. Her parents, Joseph and Margaret Reed, had tried to protect her. Her mother would hold Clara while she cried, whispering, "You're beautiful, my darling. Don't let them tell you otherwise." But words couldn't shield her from the world's cruelty. When Clara was 12, her mother fell ill. The doctor said it was consumption, but Clara knew better. Her mother had worked herself to death trying to earn extra money after her father's farm began failing. Margaret Reed died in winter, coughing blood into a rag while Clara held her hand. Her father changed after that. Joseph Reed, once gentle and kind, turned bitter and cold. He drank, he gambled, and when he looked at Clara, he saw only a burden. "You eat more than you're worth," he'd mutter, bottle in hand. "Your mother died worrying about feeding you." The words cut deeper than any blade. By the time Clara was 16, her father's debts had piled so high the creditors came weekly. They took the livestock first, the cows, the chickens, the horse. Then they took the furniture. Finally, they took the land itself. Clara tried to help. She took in washing from the town's wealthier families, scrubbing clothes until her hands bled. She hauled water from the well for neighbors who paid her pennies. She picked vegetables at nearby farms in exchange for the rotting produce they couldn't sell. But it was never enough. Merchant Abel Cross held the largest debt, $200 Joseph Reed had borrowed to buy seed that rotted in the ground during a drought. Cross was a cruel man, known for exploiting the desperate. He'd been watching the Reeds decline with cold calculation. "Your father can't pay," Cross told Clara one afternoon when she'd come to beg for more time. "But there are other ways to settle debts." His eyes traveled over her body with undisguised contempt. "You're not much to look at, but you're strong. I could sell your labor contract, 5 years of work for whoever pays your father's debt." Clara had run from the trading house that day, tears streaming down her face, knowing it was only a matter of time before her father agreed. In Silverton, Clara wasn't just mocked, she was sport. The baker's wife, Mrs. Hollis, would count every loaf Clara purchased, making loud comments. "3 loaves this week? My. No wonder you're built like a barn." The butcher, Mr. Simmons, would laugh when Clara came for scraps. "I'd give you meat, girl, but you'd probably eat it raw on the way home. Bidino." Children followed her through the streets, throwing mud and chanting cruel rhymes their parents had taught them. Clara Reed, fat as a cow, slow as a seed. Nobody wants her, nobody needs, the fattest girl nobody feeds. Once, when Clara was 17, she'd tried to attend a church social. She'd saved for weeks to buy fabric for a new dress, hoping, just hoping, that maybe someone would see past her size and ask her to dance. Instead, Thomas Whitmore, the blacksmith's son, had laughed in her face. "Dance with you? I'd rather dance with my horse. At least she's good-looking." The entire room had erupted in laughter. Clara had fled into the night, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. After that, she stopped hoping for kindness. She learned to keep her head down, to move quickly and quietly, to make herself as invisible as possible despite her size. When Clara was 19, she fell desperately ill with fever. For 2 weeks, she burned with sickness, delirious and barely conscious. The town midwife, old Martha, tended to her grudgingly, muttering about wasting medicine on girls who'd never amount to anything. When Clara finally recovered, she overheard Martha talking to Mrs. Hollis outside her window. "That fever probably ruined her insides," Martha said matter-of-factly. "Girl that's sick that size, she'll never bear children. Mark my words, she's barren." The rumor spread through Silverton like wildfire. Clara Reed was infertile, damaged goods, not even worth marrying off. It didn't matter that Martha had no actual medical knowledge. It didn't matter that no doctor had examined Clara. The rumor became fact simply because people wanted to believe the worst about her. From that day forward, Clara wasn't just fat and poor, she was worthless. Men who might have considered marrying her for her father's land, back when they still had it, now sneered openly. "Why buy a cow that can't calve?" one rancher joked at the saloon. Even the few people who'd shown Clara minimal kindness withdrew completely. What was the point of being nice to someone with no future? Joseph Reed's drinking intensified after losing the farm. They moved into a decrepit shack on the edge of town, surviving on Clara's meager earnings and Joseph's sporadic odd jobs. But Joseph's debts continued to grow. He borrowed from the saloon to pay for whiskey. He gambled at cards and lost. He made promises he couldn't keep and enemies he couldn't escape. One night, drunk and raging, he struck Clara across the face so hard she saw stars. "This is your fault," he screamed. "If you weren't such a burden, I could have made something of myself. Your mother died ashamed of you, and now you're going to pay for what you've cost me." Clara touched her swelling cheek, tasting blood, and said nothing. What could she say? Her father had already decided she was the source of all his failures. The next morning, Joseph went to Abel Cross's trading house and signed the papers. He sold his daughter for $200. Clara woke that morning to find her father gone and a note on the table. "Gone to settle debts. You're Cross's problem now. Don't come looking for me." She didn't understand until 2 of Cross's men arrived at the shack, grabbed her roughly by the arms, and dragged her through the muddy streets toward the trading house. People came out of their homes to watch, pointing and laughing. "There goes Clara Reed, finally getting what she deserves. About time someone took her off our hands. I give it a week before whoever buys her regrets it." By the time they threw her into the trading house, Clara was covered in mud, her dress torn, her dignity shredded. Abel Cross looked at her with cold satisfaction. "Your father settled his debt. You're mine to sell now. Clean yourself up. Buyers will be here within the hour." When the buyers gathered, Clara stood on a raised platform like livestock at a cattle auction. Her hands were tied in front of her. Cross said it was to prevent her from running. The men who'd come to bid looked at her with expressions ranging from contempt to cruel amusement. "This one," Cross announced, "is my last offer of the season. Sturdy, strong, can cook and clean. She's got some drawbacks." He paused for laughter. "But if you don't mind feeding her, she'll work hard." "What about breeding?" called out a rancher named Harlan Polk. "Can she give a man sons?" Cross shook his head with theatrical sadness. "Afraid not. The midwife says she's barren. Fever ruined her insides years ago. But if you're looking for labor, not family, she'll do." The crowd roared with laughter. "Barren and broad," someone shouted. "What good is she?" Another added, "I wouldn't pay $10 for damaged goods." Clara felt her vision swimming. The humiliation pressed down on her like a physical weight, making it hard to breathe. She'd known her life was hard, but this, being sold like a broken tool while men laughed, this was a new depth of degradation. Cross started the bidding at $50. No one raised a hand. 40 then? Come now, gentlemen, she's strong as an ox. Still nothing. $30 and I'll throw in cleaning supplies. A drunk miner finally raised his hand. $20. I need someone to haul ore carts. She looks strong enough. Cross's face reddened. 20? She's worth more than... I'll pay 100. The voice came from the back of the room, deep and calm. Every head turned to see a tall mountain man standing near the door. He was massive, broad-shouldered, bearded, dressed in buckskin and fur. His gray eyes were cold as winter steel. $100? Cross sputtered. You're joking. I don't joke. The stranger dropped a heavy leather pouch on the counter. Gold coins clinked audibly. That's payment in full. Release her. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. Cross counted the gold twice, his greedy hands trembling. Sold, he finally declared. She's yours, Tanner. Clara's head snapped up. Tanner. The mountain man approached the platform, his ice-blue eyes locking onto hers. Recognition flickered. Hello, Clara. Her breath caught. Jack Tanner. The quiet boy from her childhood who'd drawn pictures in the dirt while other children played. He'd left Silverton 10 years ago after his parents died. Rumor said he'd become a wild man of the mountains, dangerous, violent, unpredictable, and he'd just paid $100 for her. As Jack untied her hands, the crowd's mockery reached its peak. Good luck with that one, Tanner. Hope you got a strong wagon. She'll break a horse. At least she'll keep you warm in winter, plenty of insulation. Tia, don't expect any children from her. Damaged goods through and through. Jack's expression hardened. He turned to face the crowd, and his voice carried across the room like thunder. You people are pathetic. You've spent years tormenting this woman for being different. You've mocked her, starved her, stolen her dignity. And now you're laughing while she's sold like livestock? He pointed at Cross. You're a merchant of misery, profiting from desperation. He pointed at the rancher who'd asked about breeding. You're a coward who measures human worth by function. He swept his arm across the entire crowd. And all of you are complicit. You watched this happen and did nothing. You laughed. You enjoyed it. His gray eyes were merciless. I hope you remember this day. Remember how you treated someone vulnerable. Because when your own suffering comes, and it will, I hope someone shows you more mercy than you showed her. The room fell into uncomfortable silence. Jack turned to Clara, his voice softening. Come on, let's go. As they walked toward the door, Clara heard her father's voice from the back of the crowd. Good riddance, Joseph Reed shouted drunkenly. Finally rid of that burden. Clara's heart shattered completely. Her own father, the man who'd once carried her on his shoulders, who'd told her she was his sunshine, that man was gone. Only this bitter, cruel stranger remained. Jack's hand rested gently on her shoulder. Don't look back, he said quietly. Nothing good waits in that direction. And as they stepped into the cold Montana morning, Clara Reed left behind everything she'd ever known. Her father, her town, her suffering. She didn't know what waited ahead in the mountains with this stranger who'd paid a fortune for her, but she knew it couldn't possibly be worse than what she was leaving behind. By the second week of travel, Clara's body throbbed from the ride, but the air felt cleaner the higher they climbed. Jack's cabin sat deep in a hidden valley surrounded by green meadows and a stream running clear as glass. The mountains above glowed pink under sunset. She could hardly breathe. It's beautiful. Jack unloaded supplies and simply said, Welcome home. He gave her the smaller of two adjoining cabins, cozy with a bed, stove, and shelves lined with simple tools. Stay here, he said. You'll work if you want. You'll eat if you're hungry, but you're free. Free? She whispered, as if afraid the word would vanish if spoken too loud. Abel Cross sold lies, Clara, but I don't trade in people. Her throat tightened. Then why pay for me? He took off his gloves, gazing into the distance. Because I wanted to make sure no one else did. That night, Clara cried quietly in the privacy of her new bed. She'd never had four walls that didn't echo with her father's insults, or a roof where cold didn't seep through the cracks. Every kindness Jack offered felt like a wound healing too fast, leaving her dizzy. Word spread quickly to Silverton that the fat, barren girl lived with Jack Tanner in the mountains. Merchants sneered that he'd taken pity on her size. Ranch servants laughed that she was his hired cook, until he tired of her. Even clergymen muttered that no decent union came from such an arrangement. Twice when Jack came into town to sell pelts, drunk men made jokes. "Bet she keeps you warm in winter, eh, Tanner?" Jack turned, slammed a man's face into the bar counter, and said quietly, "Say her name again, and I'll break your teeth." The joke never surfaced again, but Clara heard the rumors drift up the trails anyway, like smoke. She tried not to care, but part of her still believed she was everything they said: heavy, unwanted, less than whole. Clara worked harder than she ever had. She cleaned, cooked, tended the gardens, tanned hides, cared for livestock. Jack hunted and traded, teaching her snaring, shooting, and how to read the prints in snow. Some nights they shared the fire silently, the wind moaning outside, the quiet filled with unspoken comfort. Occasionally, he left for days to trap up north. Those were strangely empty times. She caught herself waiting for his whistle on the path, her heart leaping at the sound of his boots outside the door. Still, she kept believing their bond was practical. Gratitude, nothing more. Until one winter night changed everything. They were caught in a storm. Jack had gone to fetch firewood and returned soaked, half frozen, his skin burning from cold. Without thinking, Clara had stripped his wet coat and dragged him beside the fire, covering him with blankets, rubbing warmth into his hands. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the small cabin seemed too small, too bright from the firelight. Jack's breath came ragged. "You shouldn't," he started. "Hush," she whispered, pressing a warm cloth to his forehead. "If I can't help someone dying before me, then I'm no better than those who watched my father die." He caught her wrist gently. "You've saved enough, Clara. You deserve saving, too." Something deep inside her, something she'd buried under years of shame, broke open. She turned her face away quickly. "Don't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I'll believe you." Spring brought thaw and wildflowers and guilt that weighed heavier than snow ever had. One morning, while Jack chopped wood by the stream, Clara stood nearby, trembling. "Jack, there's something I need to tell you." He leaned on his axe. "You're shaking like I shot you. What's wrong?" She swallowed hard. "Abel Cross told you I was barren." "I don't listen to merchants." "It's not just rumor," she blurted. "People said I was infertile because of a sickness I had at 16. Fever took a week, nearly killed me. The midwife whispered that it ruined my womb. I told everyone it was true, to keep them away. But it isn't. Not really. The doctor never said for certain. I just used it like armor." Her voice dropped. "If you brought me here wanting children, I can't promise you that." Jack studied her a long moment, then put down his axe and walked slowly toward her. "I didn't buy you for children, Clara. I bought you so no one else could." She stared, barely breathing. "Then, you knew?" He nodded. "I knew rumors lie. Always have. I learned that when folks said I was a killer after defending myself in a duel. You and I both know what rumor feels like on our backs like thorns." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I'm sorry. I thought if I told you, you'd leave." He smiled softly and reached up to brush a tear from her cheek. "I don't care what they said about you. I want you, Clara. The woman who fished tadpoles from the creek so they wouldn't dry. The woman who faced hunger and still chooses kindness. That's who I want beside me. Always." She broke then, sobbing, laughing, clinging to him as the wind whipped around them. "I thought no one could ever want me." "I've been wanting you since Silverton," he whispered. And when he kissed her, it wasn't the desperate claiming of a savior, but the quiet meeting of two souls who'd no longer pretend to be unworthy of love. Their marriage was simple: a preacher who passed through the trading post, two witnesses from the nearby ranch, and a sunset-like fire over the peaks. Years glided by like gentle rivers. They built more cabins, grew gardens, raised livestock. Clara laughed often now, her steps sure across the valley her husband had once traversed alone. And to their astonishment, one winter morning she whispered, "Jack, I'm late." He froze, then caught her hands, eyes filling with pure joy. "You mean months later, under the soft snow of January, Clara gave birth to a small, dark-haired boy. They named him Samuel, after Jack's father. 2 years later came a daughter, Lydia, tiny, fierce, and loud like a bird demanding the world see her. When the children cried at night, Jack rocked them in his bear-like arms, humming lullabies in his rough mountain drawl. Clara watched, overcome by love until her chest hurt. "I told you," Jack whispered one night, holding her close. "The only thing I ever wanted was you." Abel Cross's trading business faltered years later. Old, swollen from drink, he stumbled into Silverton gossiping that the Tanner woman had grown wealthy selling hides and herbs to passing explorers. He laughed too loudly at the memory of calling her barren. One icy evening, Jack rode into Silverton for supplies. He found Cross begging by the saloon door. The merchant tried to sneer. "You enjoy your fat prize still, Tanner?" Jack's stare didn't waver. "She gave me everything you never had, the courage to be kind." He dropped a silver coin at the merchant's feet. "Keep your pity. I don't need it." When he turned his horse toward the mountains again, the people of Silverton watched silently. Some whispered that Clara Tanner must be blessed. Others finally admitted they had been wrong all along. Years later, long after Cross's name was forgotten, the Tanner homestead became a resting place for weary travelers. Clara's kitchen always smelled of bread. Strangers who stumbled into her valley said they'd never tried food that tasted so much like kindness. Jack grew gray-bearded and scarred by time, but his eyes never lost their warmth whenever he looked at her. One evening, as snow fell gentle outside, Clara sat by the fire with her grandchildren piled against her lap. Jack carved a wooden toy by the hearth. "I used to think being alive was punishment," she told him softly. He looked up, smiling. And now?" "Now I think it was a gift, one I survived long enough to find you." Jack put down the carving, reached out a roughened hand and took hers. "You weren't a gift the world gave me, Clara. You were the one I went into the dark to find." Outside, the mountains slept beneath the snow. Inside, laughter and love filled the house like music. And if a traveler ever asked about the legend of the fat girl sold as barren, the locals would say, "She wasn't barren. She bloomed in the mountains."